Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon everybody. I hope you're all having a fabulous evening. This evening's video, I want to tell you about this guy, in case you don't know who he is. His name's Douglas. Now I'll come to Douglas in a minute. And before anybody asks what I think of Megan's latest outfits for Invictus, no comment, I'm not interested. It is with pure clarity that I see that she is using Invictus, in my opinion, as a stepping stone and PR exercise, and it sickens me. And I'll explain why. I went to school at St Mary's Hall in Brighton, and I had various friends there, but one of my closest and longest standing friends was called Angela, and that is her real name. I won't say her second name. Angela and I were extremely unlikely friends. She was a brain box. She was so naturally clever. Some of the kids used to tease her and say Angela swallowed the dictionary. She had a very posh British accent. She just found it so easy, academia, which I didn't. She was hugely intelligent, as in she was kind of streetwise. She was only a kid. She had no reason to be streetwise, but she could size situations up so quickly. She was one of these people that could say, Fiona, this is going to go tits up really fast because of A, B and C. And I couldn't see it and she could. Now, the way we made friends was I didn't like PE, physical education, and neither did she. We both disliked it for completely different reasons. Me, because no matter how hard I tried to hit a ball or hit the hoop, I just couldn't do it. And people would I'd be the last to be picked for a team, and the team members would groan if I was selected. I hated it. She hated it because she had an illness. She had sickle cell. Angela was black. She was a woman of colour, and she was an independent woman of colour. When I first made friends with her, we were in the changing rooms at St Mary's Hall, and she said to me, there's a utility cupboard. If you want to avoid PE, I hide in there and they never notice. And then when they've all gone from when the teachers called them all from the changing rooms, we've got the changing rooms to ourselves. And then at the end of the lesson, we go back in and hide, and we come out and pretend like we've just changed. And I said, no way, you're so goody two-shoes. Angela, you're telling me you break rules and you do things. How long have you been doing this? She went, just come. And she dragged me into this cupboard. And sure enough, the teachers called all the girls. Nobody noticed. And we did that for about a year. And we had an absolute hoot every PE lesson. And what we found even funnier was, because we were both kind of dreading our school reports, which were a bit like a checkbook, and each teacher filled in a page. And we were both kind of dreading that our parents would see that we hadn't attended PE. But actually it turned out that the PE teacher had given us both glowing reports saying, Angela has surpassed herself at PE this year. Oh, Fiona's showing exceptional leaps and bounds, which we just thought was hilarious. And it went on for about 3 years. And our parents, to their dying days, I think, never knew that we didn't go to PE. We were just pissing around in the changing rooms. Anyway, of course, we got chatting and we became big friends, and she came for sleepovers, as I lived in Lewes, she lived in Brighton, and I'd go and have sleepovers for her parents got her a CB radio, and we had loads of fun with that. And we'd go on eyeballs, like blind meets with people. It's quite dangerous actually. And we were huge friends. And when I was about 17, when I first met her, it looked like she had a twisted ankle. She always walked like her foot was slightly twisted, so she dipped as she walked. Not exactly a limp. And she had so many operations on it, and I kept saying to her, what is the problem? And she said, oh, it's to do with blood flow and blood cells, and don't ask. And I met her when I was about 11. When I was 17, she phoned me up, and she'd had a plaster cast on her leg on and off and a lot of operations, and eventually she phoned me and she said, Fiona, I'm in the Royal Sussex Hospital. I'm on Peel ward. And I said, oh, I had no idea you were in hospital. What's the matter? And she said, well, you know, the doctors have done all these operations, as you know, over the years on my leg. And they basically told me there's nothing else they can do. And they said the only option is amputation. To which I gasped and said, no. And she said, Fiona, my leg was amputated yesterday. And I didn't know what to say. Anyway, I said, I'm coming tomorrow. I'll be at the hospital. I went to visit her in Peel ward. And as usual, she was a snotty cow, as usual, and snarky. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, do you know what? I'm okay. She said, look out in the corridor. How many little kids are amputees? It's not the end of the world, Fiona. And I think that was probably the moment in my life when I realised worse things happen at sea, you know. So all the shit I've been through, being on the run and crap like that, that's why I've got that sort of attitude. Anyway, she, now I was aware of Douglas from when I was about 7, because he was on Blue Peter, which is a children's show in the UK. And my parents, you know, I was like, oh, who's this boring old guy? And my parents said, that guy has no legs. But he was walking. He walked across the studio and he met all these children. And I said, well, you're lying. He's clearly got legs. And they said, no, he has no legs. Both his legs were amputated and he learned to walk on tin legs. He was a World War II Spitfire pilot. He fought in the Battle of Britain during the Second World War. Well, I was very suspicious. I'm not sure about this. I think they might be lying about this, actually. And then I never really gave it any more thought until that day when I went to Peel ward to see Angela. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, Angela did great. She got up and about and mobile and recovered very quickly. She was the same age as me, 17-year-old girl. Can you imagine? And she said to me, do you know what? I'm thinking of learning to fly. This is years before I met Graham. You know, I didn't meet Graham till I was 27. And I said, how can you, isn't that expensive? And she said, it is expensive, but there's a thing called the Douglas Bader Foundation. And they offer grants to amputees. Because the story with Douglas is that he was showing off, basically. I think he was goaded a little bit by people and doing very, very low flying aerobatics, and the wing of his aeroplane clipped the ground and he crashed, and that's how he lost both legs. This is before the Battle of Britain. And a lot of people would just give up, sit in a wheelchair maybe, and quite rightly too, and feel pissed off and depressed. But not Douglas, not Douglas. And he went on to fight the Battle of Britain. There's so much information about him. It's pronounced Bader, but spelt B-A-D-E-R. Douglas Bader, Sir Douglas Bader, Sir Douglas Bader. Now, they went on and they made a movie about Douglas after the war, starring Kenneth More. It's called Reach for the Skies. I'm actually just going to turn my ice maker off because I think it's interrupting the sound. Hang on. There's always something in my videos. Anyway, I found this interview of Douglas, which is only 10 minutes long, and I just really appreciate him even more as a person. I've always loved Douglas. I love and admire Douglas Bader not because he's a double amputee who went on to fight as a pilot in the Second World War. I love Douglas because he wouldn't let his disability defeat him. And not only that, he went on as a figurehead, really. Not an icon, not a hero, but as a person, an example of a human being who faced so much and turned it all around. And I found this 10-minute interview on YouTube, so under fair use and fair dealing, and I will give a shout out to the YouTuber who's been so marvellous as to upload this piece of history, quite frankly. The YouTuber is called Chuck Owl, and we are subscribed to Chuck Owl, and he has 16,900 subscribers, and I will put a link to this video in the description. And what I'd like to do is play Douglas and pause him intermittently and talk about how I think what he's saying in this 1960s interview is very relevant to the goings on and stuff today. So I'll just turn the sound right up so the camera can pick it up. And the interviewer is interviewing him basically about Reach for the Skies and the film that was made about him.
And this is the man whom Kenneth More portrayed in Reach for the Sky, Group Captain Douglas Bader. That scene that we've just seen depicted one of the most crucial moments in your career, in your life. How does it compare with what really happened when you went up to fly again for the RAF?
Well, it's difficult really to criticize the scene because basically it's a jolly good scene. In actual fact, the only slight exaggeration, I think one must be permitted to say that, was that the chap was flying with me because the thing was dual control. I mean, he merely said, well, look, oh boy, it's all yours. But obviously it's a good thing for him to have had cramp in the hand or something else. But
Can you remember your feelings at that particular time?
yes, the feeling was interesting because I thought when I first got into an aeroplane, you know, with the two artificial legs, that I would find a method of flying it, but it would feel different. In actual fact, the strange thing was that as soon as I put my feet on the rudder bar, and there were no brake pedals in those days, you know, and started flying, it didn't feel any different at all.
Well, now, this is one particular scene, one particular occasion. What was your general reaction to Reach for the Sky? I know, in fact, you never saw the film publicly, but I gather you did see it, or most of it, before it was released.
Yes, I did. Well, actually, it was... it's a very difficult thing to answer that, because the producer of the film, a chap called Daniel Angel, for whom I have the greatest possible regard, he was in the army in the war, and he got polio in India, fighting out there, and he's paralyzed in the way to waste hours. He's a very good chap, and we had the most monumental arguments about the script and so on around things. And of course, the difficulty of looking at a film about yourself, whether it's you or me or whoever it is, and your past, is that you see, it's unreal. You see, for instance, scenes you recognize, words you recollect, and people saying things, and you recognize it all, but it's being said by strangers. Your wife is some girl you've never seen before in your life. You are depicted by Kenneth More or whoever it is, you know, and so you can't understand it anyhow. But the whole thing is unreal. You cannot see it objectively.
Did Kenneth More, in fact, consult much with you about the part?
Kenneth More was very, very wise about this, certainly afterwards. He saw me once. We met at lunchtime when he said he'd do the part, you know, Danny Angel and people. And then he played a round of golf with me because he wanted to see what happened on the golf course. And he never saw me again until the film had been finished. Because he said, and of course he was quite right, he said, look, he said, if I live with you, a lot of people said to me, you know, look, I suppose Kenneth More has lived with you for weeks and so on, you know, and knows it because he's so frightfully good, he took you off so marvellously. And the answer was that Kenneth More said, well, look, he said, if I am against you all the time, I shall caricature you. And he was absolutely right.
We were talking about how you felt about the film. How did people close to you, your friends and your wife?
My friends, and these are the people who met in life, obviously my friends said it was frightfully good, and my wife slipped off to the local one evening, you know, several weeks after it had been shown, and she came back and said, of course, it's absolutely uncanny the way that Kenneth More has got you. He's quite extraordinary. Now he did it. Now that's my old wife. I mean, I've been keeping the woman for 30 years odd, you know, now, and she really must know.
The reputation which you have is surely by now is of being a kind of living legend. It's something that you have had attached to yourself and which you must be.
Now, this is what I want to do, is pause it, because Douglas has come under criticism because some people have said he could be an arrogant bastard. And actually in this interview, I'm finding that very hard to believe. Very, very hard to believe. Exceptionally humble, and especially his comments about the Battle of Britain, who fought the Battle of Britain and how it was won, and our heritage. I think his remarks are exceptional and will resonate today.
Of course, aware of. Is it something that is difficult to live with?
No, it's a difficult thing to answer that, but I can only tell you the truth on this one. I think it's jolly nice of people to want my autograph. I think it's nice of people to write to me or to want to see the film about me, and it's nice of you to want to talk to me on the television. I mean, I'm humbly jolly pleased, if I can express it that way. I'm not a bit diffident or miserable about it. I love it, but I'm humbly pleased about it. I'm not conceited about it.
Well, could we turn from the film and from the book to, as it were, the time, or one of the historic events, of course, associated with your life, the Battle of Britain, which at this time of year, of course, we celebrate the achievement of RAF pilots such as yourself. Of course, with the passing of time, the number of people actively involved is going to dwindle and become less and less. And do you think we're right to continue to give it the importance that we now do?
Well, you asked two questions in one. Let me deal with the first one. You talked about RAF pilots like myself. What I think one must emphasize, and I would know that every other RAF pilot would want me to emphasize this, is that the Battle of Britain was not won by the Royal Air Force. It was won by everyone in this country, by the people on the ground who took the bombing, the fire services and all these auxiliary services who fought the flames, who didn't give up. I mean, anybody can, it's much easier, put it that way, it's much easier to go into the battle and fight than it is to sit on the ground and take it and watch you and me doing the fighting, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't make any mistake, this Battle of Britain is the lot of us, it's not just the Royal Air Force. Now, I've forgotten what the other thing was you asked me.
Well, the second was whether, in fact, we continue to give it the importance as the event becomes more and more part of history, as it were.
Well, eventually, of course, it'll finish up with one very old and decrepit Battle of Britain pilot, sort of, you know, doing that and sitting there by himself, you know, at dinner and celebrating. But in actual fact, to be more serious, this has become part of our tradition. I mean, after all, there's Trafalgar Day, there's all sorts of other days, there's the Cenotaph ceremony on November the 11th, all these things which become part of history. Now, because there are people alive who took part in it, it doesn't mean that it's going to go out. I mean, as the years roll on, this will be added as it has been added to Trafalgar and all the other things which you and I read in our history books.
Do you resent the kind of picture which perhaps a younger generation seems to have of Battle of Britain pilots, of the RAF generally at that time, the kind of step up attitude and of treating it all as a game?
Well, I don't know what the younger generation do think, because they've...
well, some of them, I think, do have this picture, and others as well.
Yes, but I know, but I mean, after all, you're a good deal younger than I am, but I mean, I remember when I was a young man, we were always taking the mickey out of the older generation, you know. I mean, after all, you can say, all right, well, I mean, the Air Force gave the impression of light-heartedness and so on. Well, this was the way one lived. You can't help it. You can't change it. The fact was that in the event it worked. I mean, I know some of the other two services that used to regard our discipline as rather peculiar sometimes.
There is also, of course, is there not, the reaction against military heroism or military achievement of any kind, which we find in teach-ins and indeed in protest songs too. How do you treat this development?
Yes, well, I think this is all part of the pattern. After all, in my day, which was many, many years before yours, I remember the Oxford Union got gigantic publicity from voting that they would not vote, that they would not fight for king and country in the event of a war. Now, those very chaps who in the late 20s said that and got a lot of publicity and did all the things that these chaps are doing now were the chaps who were first volunteers for the Royal Navy, the Army, and the Royal Air Force, and you know, so put out most monumental fellows like Richard Hillary, who maybe you've seen his book,
Yes.
which is coming out again recently. That type of person was that type, and they're the same type now. The pattern doesn't change.
And you feel no sense of resentment at all?
Not in the very least, no. I'm all for the young. I'm all for them doing all the things they want to and saying what they want to, provided they don't irritate other people and disturb the peace.
Could I read you a quote from Paul Brickhill's book, Reach for the Sky? He says of you, "At times I know he feels a lurking regret that his great days are over, not realizing that they will never leave him." Well, that was written in 1954 in the book. Do you still feel that sense of regret?
No, I know what Paul meant when he wrote that, and I think if you left out the "I know," I think the thing is probably right. I don't think any of us. I mean, after all, it's like a famous athlete who retires from the game. He may look at the game and say, "By Jove, I'd love to go and just have another go," you know. But I don't think he really regrets that he, in fact, has finished, you know. Because as you get older, I mean, your memories become more important to you, and it's very agreeable to sit back and think of them, you know. I don't think one regrets it. No, I wouldn't say I regret it at all.
Well, could I put one last point to you? The way in which you've overcome your physical injuries has, of course, helped countless people in war and in peace. Do you like to think of your achievement and of the inspiration which you can give as being primarily military and patriotic, or is it something personal and private?
No, that's a two-edged question, and it's difficult to answer in one. No, what you say or what you imply is right. Of course, one is delighted that one was lucky in the war. Now, if I hadn't been lucky in the war, the disability side of it would never have been publicized. And there are many other chaps who fought far better and much more effective than I did, but the fact I hadn't got any legs caused me to get publicity. Now, that, as you say, has helped a lot of people, maybe, and I hope so, who've had similar disabilities. On the other hand, the other thing I must say is this: there are a lot of chaps like myself who've lost both their legs, who are just as good as I am and on them, in fact, probably better now, who haven't had the publicity because they didn't have the good fortune I had in the war, which gave me the publicity. So, whereas I can do it, see other blokes and help them and get written to and so on, and go and visit them, a lot of these other chaps probably do it still, but you don't know their names, nor do I, because they haven't been published, you see what I mean? It's as simple as that.
Douglas Bader, thank you very much.
Well, I always get emotional when I watch Douglas because he's absolutely right, and he's so humble in explaining that he wasn't a fortunate person being a double amputee, but he was fortunate in getting the publicity and the attention. And he did, in 1982, form the Douglas Bader Foundation. And I am an enormous supporter of these types of disabilities. The Douglas Bader Foundation also supports people who are born with these disabilities and the mental health that they have. So Harry didn't invent the wheel with Invictus. Invictus is a great cause. Unfortunately, it's being dragged to the ground by a Instagram loving bitch publicity whore. I'm sorry. The PR, I don't know if it's an American PR type thing or Hollywood PR type thing. It's sickening. You don't use charities to elevate yourself. And thank you very much, all of you, for bearing with me and listening to Douglas. He's awesome, awesome. He's my biggest hero, and of course, one of Graham's biggest heroes. Graham, of course, because Douglas was a pilot and a daredevil and a dogfighter. Mine more because of my friend Angela, who unfortunately I lost touch with when I went on the run around Europe. She did call my mum about 3 or 4 weeks after the publicity hit when I went on the run and said, is she okay? And my mum said she's okay, and I never heard from her again. I don't know if she's even alive because, as I say, she had quite serious sickle cell. So there you have it. That's why Invictus, it would have been nice if it had been made available. There are live things on YouTube. They're all in German. It's not particularly good camera work. I think the people who organise Invictus do a great disservice to the contestants. They could do with some decent people in PR. And Douglas was knighted for his achievements. So there you go. And I'm not giving any attention to that Instagram loving bitch until it's all over. She can get bent as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much, all of you, for listening.